Okay, so on today's episode of The Spiritual Journey, we have Louise Bloomer with us, who is also known as the Wiccan Lady. Louise is a qualified therapist, teacher, and empath whose passion is witchcraft. So welcome, Louise.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
So Louise, you describe yourself as being half Wiccan and half Hedgewitch. So
Yes.
Can you just explain a bit about what those two types of witches are?
Okay, so generally speaking, the two types of witchcraft probably couldn't be further apart. So it's not very often you get somebody that's half of one and half of the other. So Wicca is very ritualistic. And most Wiccans will have a full-blown altar with a cauldron on it, a wand, crystals, candles, and they will, when they do ritual work around the festivals, it tends to be all singing and dancing. So they won't just do a little spell under the breath. They generally will light the cauldron. I tend to do mine outside in the garden, normally have other people there with me. Hedge witchery is the complete opposite because that is a very solitary type of witchcraft.
Okay.
So it is not ritualistic at all. And generally, if I'm having a hedge witch day and I want to do a ritual, the most I will use is a little tea light candle, generally again outside in my garden, and that is all that it needs. So Wicca, I find, is a lot more sort of spell and goddess related. With hedge witchery, it's a lot more meditation related. People tend to think that hedge witchery is about collecting herbs from the hedgerow, and that isn't what it's about at all.
That's what came into my mind.
Those tend to be what we call green witches or kitchen witches. But a hedge witch is somebody who does a lot of meditation and trance work. So it's about finding out what the universe needs, and rather than expecting the elementals like fairies or pixies or whatever to come to you and give you that information, you're actually going into their realm and collecting the information from source. So it is completely different to Wicca, there's no doubt about it, but somehow I've just been able to sort of merge the two together. So
So when did you first discover that you were a witch, or that you were into witchcraft?
I think probably as far back as being about 5, I knew that there was more to the world than what I was being taught in school by my teachers. And I always felt very different to everybody else in my class. So I remember a friend of mine's mum saying that she thought I was a very old head on young shoulders. And that really stuck with me. And I now see that a lot in people that come to the shows that I'm at, or contact me via the internet, that there's lots and lots of quite young people who you're having conversations with, and you believe that they were 60 or 70, the knowledge that they've got about rituality and witchcraft. So, but yeah, I knew from quite a young age that I wasn't the same as everybody else.
So when did you start practicing your witchcraft more openly?
I used to say little sort of spells, not really knowing that they were spells, when I was in junior school. And when I went to senior school, I started sort of dabbling in other little things. So I bought tarot cards that I really didn't use properly, and I had a set of runes that I didn't use properly. But it was probably when I was in my early 20s that I bought a book from a charity shop and read it, and the lady that had written the book, it was like her biography, and she basically said that she was a witch, and I thought there's lots and lots in this book that really has meaning to me and resonates with my beliefs. So I thought, well, I'll do some of the things that she's doing and see how it goes. So I became more open about it. But I would say probably it's only been in the last 10 years that I have not bothered what other people think. But now if people say to me, you know, it says the Wiccan lady on your car, what's that all about? I'm quite happy to say that I'm a witch.
Yeah.
But yes, that's probably only happened in the last 10 years.
Okay. So, you know, when you first started telling people that you were a witch, did you ever receive like any negative remarks?
Lots.
I can imagine that. Bless you.
I once was threatened to be stoned by somebody.
Oh my days.
And I once was told that by a lady that in the country where she lived, I would have been killed for sure because it was a really negative thing that I was doing.
Oh my days.
I've had many people from the church quite negative about witchcraft. And I think that generally is down to the fact that people tend to believe what they see portrayed by Hollywood and, you know, different TV programs and films. There actually is very little difference between paganism and Christianity. It's just paganism came first, that's all.
Yeah.
But doing a spell is no different than saying a prayer while you're in church.
Yeah.
Just manifesting something into the universe. So I think a lot of it is just people that don't really understand. That's all. But yeah, there's been quite a bit of negativity, but it doesn't bother me now.
Yeah, I was going to say, so like in terms of the negative perceptions, do you feel that's come from like, you know, obviously thousands of years ago, witches were burnt at the stake. And then since then, it feels like witches have always had like a bit of a bad name. Like you said, you know, portrayed in movies or in like in programs, etc. And in stories, I mean, like the Wizard of Oz, you've got the good witch and the bad witch. So do you think that has fueled people's thoughts and beliefs around what a witch is?
I do, because I think in the burning times, a lot of the people that were actually either burnt or drowned were innocent people. They weren't witches, and even if they were witches, why were people burning and drowning them? And I think that has stuck in some respects. But you only have to look at the different films that have been produced, where generally witchcraft is portrayed as something quite negative, and it is nearly always portrayed as a bunch of people in an attic somewhere with a pentagram in a circle of salt and a black cat and loads of candles, and that generally is not what it's about at all.
So how do you explain to someone about what being a witch is about?
I tend to say to people that my religion is just a nature-based religion. So obviously in Wicca, we don't believe in causing harm to anybody. So I generally mention that to people. They seem quite surprised that I'm not grabbing children by the ankle and dunking them up and down in the cauldron. And I have had on numerous occasions people say to me, you know, do you collect newts and toads and things like that? No, I don't.
Good to hear it.
So it's interesting that all of these types of things, like when you see old-fashioned spells and it says use Eye of Newt, Eye of Newt was actually a herb. It wasn't an actual animal.
Oh, was it? Oh, I never knew that.
So, like, a lot of old-fashioned spells have got graveyard dirt in them.
Yeah.
Actual dirt from a graveyard.
Oh, I didn't know any of that.
Yes.
Ah.
So there are a lot of old-fashioned herbal names, and I think that didn't help because people genuinely think that people were chopping legs off toads and that type of thing.
Yeah.
They weren't. It's just where that particular herb resembled the name that people gave it.
I see.
So that's, you know, all it is. Like Eye of Newt is actually poppy seed.
Yeah. It's what? Poppy seed?
Yeah, so poppy seeds are really tiny and they're black and they're round. So
Yeah.
I suppose they resemble in some respect a newt eyeball.
Yeah. So in terms of witchcraft as well, and sort of like the spells, and you're saying that you can use them for good, what sort of things can you use witches' spells for?
Generally, you can use it for anything that has a positive connotation. So, because in Wicca we don't cause harm to anybody, if for instance your neighbour was really annoying you, and not as a witch, you were thinking, I really need to get rid of my neighbour. They're playing music at 2 in the morning every day and I can't cope. What a Wiccan would do is they would do a spell rather than for the person to become ill or be run over by a lorry or something to stop the problem. They would do a spell for the person to be offered a much better house somewhere else. So they might be kind to other people as well, and they might say that this new house they were going to be offered had no neighbours near it who would be worried by the music.
Yeah.
So often the spells that Wiccans will do will have, whatever the issue is, they will always try and turn it to a positive point of view. So I had an issue where I was bullied a few years ago in work, and it really had got very out of hand, and the person who should have dealt with it didn't want to. So my friends were saying to me, you're a witch, do a spell and get this person off your back. Anyway, in the end, I did do a spell. So this person had said they were applying for other jobs. So I did a spell for this person to be offered one of those jobs, for it to be the best job they had ever had. It was on more money, it was on better hours, and it was that good that they didn't even want to work their notice. They would just take the job and leave immediately.
Yeah.
So I told one of my friends that I'd done it. She said, you must be mad. After all the grief this person has caused you, why would you wish them all these great things? And I said, because I don't care what happens to them. All I care about is that they could no longer upset me.
Yeah.
And I would rather that they didn't upset me in a positive way than they didn't upset me in a negative way. Another thing that Wiccans particularly really believe in is the rule of 3. So that's basically karma, but we believe that whatever we put out into the universe comes back to us threefold. So if I'm trying to only put positivity out into the universe, then I know that only positive things can come back to me.
That's a lovely way of thinking.
Yeah, so that it isn't always easy, and sometimes I get up and I think today I'm having a Hedgewitch day because they don't necessarily believe in the rule of 3.
Yeah.
So somebody's really annoying me. But I do try and stick to that positive connotation all the time. Because I think the more positive we are in ourselves, we do just attract more positivity, whether it's from what's happening in our life or the people that we have around us. So I think that's important, whether you're a witch or not. You know, better to be positive than negative.
Oh, definitely. So if somebody wants to become a witch, or like officially, is there any sort of channels that they have to go through, or do they need to find like a teacher witch?
That varies depending on what type of witch they choose to be.
Okay.
So, for instance, head witches, we are very solitary. So you would just go and do your own thing. Nowadays, we're really lucky because Google has absolutely everything that you could ever wish to know.
Mm.
And there are lots and lots of books out there that people can read.
Mm.
With Wicca, it is slightly different because you can be initiated into a coven.
Okay.
So a coven obviously is just a group of witches who generally work together.
Mm-hmm.
So there's many Wiccans that have just done their own thing, and they bought a book and read it and thought, I'll take this bit and that bit out of it, and that really works for me.
Yeah.
But the Wiccans that want to be part of a coven generally will go on a learning path for a year, and at the end of the year, you are then initiated into the coven.
Mm.
So I run a witches school, and me and my students meet once a month. So we meet 12 times. During the rest of that month, they get 2 lots of homework to do.
Mm.
Generally revolves around whatever we've spoken about when we've had our 2-hour meeting. And then at the end of that year, so depending what happens with the virus, it should be in September this year, any of the people on this year's course will be able to be initiated. So some of them will, some of them won't, because they're just happy with what they've learned. They'll just go off and do their own thing.
Mm.
But the ones that then want to be initiated, we will have a proper ritual, and they then will be able to come and join my coven. So I have rituals at my home for each of the festivals, and at the moment anybody can come. So I generally advertise it on my Wiccan Lady group.
Yeah.
First come, first served. But after I've done this next initiation in September, should we be clear to be meeting in groups, then obviously the people that have been initiated would get first option to come.
Mm.
It's just a really nice way to work in a controlled environment if you're not sure about what you're doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, and everybody's doing the same thing, so it makes the power of the witchcraft much more enthusiastic. So
yeah. I love that you run a witches school, because it reminds, like, my son and daughter at the minute are massively into wizards and witches. So through Harry Potter and through The Worst Witch, which I used to love when I was younger. And yesterday they were busy making love potions on the table, which consisted, I was like, I'm not precious, you know, like about paint and everything else, but they were throwing paint in there and grass, and they were stirring it all up. And I had a chap ring me, and he said, is now a good time? I said, yes, my children are just making love potions on the table. And, you know, I do think it's like running like a witch's school. It's a lovely way for someone who, like you said, is maybe unsure or doesn't want to like read the book, but wants that practical support as well, to be able to come along and be able to learn what it actually means about being a witch, you know, in this time as well. Because like I said, I feel personally like witches have had such a bad rap for a number of years, but I feel like now is the time, like you said, you know, to, if you are a witch, to be proud of that and to be able to say, this is what I do and this is who I am. So I attended a networking group with a friend a few weeks ago, and I stood up and I said about, you know, all the different sort of stuff that I did, and I said, you might have been able to burn me at the stake thousands of years ago, but you can't do that now. And it was predominantly men in the room as well, sort of like middle age, 50 to 70, and one of the chaps just went, I don't want to sit next to her now. But I think like when you can like have a sense of humor about it as well, do you know what I mean? That's part of it, isn't it? But I was going to ask you as well, is there a spell or any sort of herbs that you would recommend for people going through, obviously, the pandemic at the minute? So maybe one in terms of physical health and maybe one for anxiety that people are feeling, or stress.
So there are hundreds and hundreds of types of herbs, plants and roots that you can consume or do magic with. So it sounds a really easy question, but it isn't, because if people have an existing health issue, there are some herbs that they can't put in their diet because there's contraindications to medication that they might be on. So it's a little bit like when we use essential oils, we've got to be careful about what we use.
Yeah.
But spell-wise, any sort of generic healing spell is always really good. So you don't have to be amazing at doing spells. There are really only two things that matter. One is that it's positive, and the other is if you are good at rhyming words, it tends to be more powerful if your sentences rhyme.
Oh, okay.
But sometimes I want to do a spell for something and there's no way what I want to manifest has a word that rhymes with it. So it doesn't really matter. But if you can rhyme it, it is more powerful. Okay. So generally 2, 3, 4 lines is all that you need to have. People don't need to be able to write an A4 poem to make a spell. And a really simple way of doing that is just lighting a little tea light candle. Okay. And I would generally just put myself away in the corner somewhere where I know I'm not going to be disturbed for 5 minutes. I'll light the candle, concentrate on what it is that I want. So I try and see it in my mind, what it is that I want to create. I would then say my words, and you don't even have to say them out loud. You can say them in your mind. You know, if your puppy's sat in the same room and you're mad. So you can just say them in your mind. And while I'm doing that, I'm literally just trying to manifest the energy of what it is that I want. And it can be as simple as that. Okay. But if people are existing witches and they want it to be a little bit more complicated, then including the 4 elements always helps raise the vibration as well. So if you have salt water, a little bowl with some salt water in it, that actually covers 2 elements. So you've got earth and you've got water. A candle that's lit, so the flame is fire, and then generally an incense stick that's lit, and the smoke that comes off it is air. So that covers your 4 elements. So that would just increase the potency of it a little bit. But with relationship to herbs, I have about 160 jars of herbs. So
it's so cool.
I tend to have quite a wide variety of things that I can choose from. But I have my sort of go-to herbs that I use all the time for specific things. But a good place to start, if you know nothing about herbs, if people go onto my website, so it's just www.thewiccanlady.co.uk. There is a tab on there called Herbal Grimoire, and if they click on that, it's all completely free to do. It lists alphabetically about 260 herbs and plants with what they are good for and what element they relate to as well. Plus, if they're known by a different name, obviously some things are called one thing in the UK but called something different in America. And it also tells you which ones you can use in spells but you wouldn't put into a herbal tea.
Oh, right, okay.
Into a soup, because obviously a lot of herbs and plants are poisonous. So that would give somebody a really good sort of ground to start from,
Yeah.
and it's totally free, so they're not having to pay to get a book delivered or whatever.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things in that list you can grow really easily.
Oh, that's good to know.
Either in your garden or some of them on your windowsill. I grow a lot of my plants in old-fashioned jugs, and then my husband drills holes in the bottom of the jugs for me, fill them with soil, and I hang them on the side of my shed, because my shed is in a terrible state and needs painting. So really it's to hide the shed. And then I just stick a little name tag in each of the pots, and they grow perfectly in there. And then I just chop off as much as I need each time I need spells. And as it's coming to the end of the season of that plant, then I'll put it right back, dry all the herb, and then hence why I've got so many jars of herb.
Yeah. So one more question. Have you seen, like you said, you know, it's only been about 10 years where you've got comfortable with saying that you're a witch. So have you seen yourself a demand in people, like more people wanting to know more about witchcraft and herbs, etc.?
Definitely. I think there are a lot of people out there nowadays who are more interested in the sustainability of the earth. And whatever their background, they are interested in any ways that they can help be a part of that. So I've had people come on my courses who go to church twice a week and would never stop going to church, and that is perfectly fine, because witchcraft and Christianity can merge together perfectly well. I've got people who are totally atheist, don't believe in a god or a goddess or anything in between, but just want to live a more sustainable life. So there are more and more people talking about certainly the aspects of witchcraft, even if they're not calling it witchcraft. And so that can only be a really positive thing.
No, definitely.
And one of the other things that I've noticed is that people are much more open about coming to, because I've done my shows for a lot of years, and I used to just do therapies and crystals. And 20 years ago, people had come to the stall and they'd say, oh, what's, you know, this, picking up a big piece of rose quartz. And I'd explain what it does, and the wife would be like, oh yeah, that's really interesting, and the husband would be like, it's a rock, just put it down. Now I've probably got equal amounts of men and women making inquiries, which is really interesting.
That is interesting.
And I have lots and lots of men who contact me to have specific spells made for them. So they might not be quite as keen to have a go themselves, but they still are happy for somebody else to make it, for them to then just do in their home. So that's really interesting, and a much more varied age range as well now. And that's even changed probably in the last 5 years, that the age range has become much more varied. So a lot of older people, I think, are becoming much more open to it. It tended to be sort of younger, late teens, people in their 20s, who are probably more open-minded because they haven't had as long being told what's right and wrong in the world. But now it's literally just people from every single age group. So I've got a lovely gentleman that buys off me, and I think he's in his 90s. And you know, he contacted me a couple of years ago to buy some bits and pieces and said, I think my mum was a witch. I never realised it at the time, but he'd been to one of the shows that I was at and come and listen to one of my talks, bless him. And he said, listening to what you had to say at your talk, I realised that my mum was teaching me all those things, and I just thought that they were normal. But the word witchcraft or wicca or paganism was never ever mentioned in the house. But they are all the same things that you've talked about. So obviously his mum's died now, but he is now carrying that on with the things that she taught him. So it's lovely.
That is lovely. Oh, so, right. One more thing before I go, Louise, because I could talk to you all day. So in terms of what's going on now in the world, from a Wiccan perspective, what's your thoughts about what's going on at the minute?
I think it's really difficult. One of the things that I genuinely believe is when everybody in the world is doing very negative things to the earth, there becomes a crisis point. And, you know, there's been numerous issues over the years where things have happened and we've ended up with a pandemic or a war or whatever the situation be. So for me, it would be really great if while people are just sat at home twiddling the thumbs or ripping the hair out if they've got children at home as well, that they have a think about what it is that they can do from a personal point of view that would make the earth a better place. And that might be just as simple as checking on the little old lady 3 doors down from where they live. Obviously, if you're doing it in the next few weeks in a safe way.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be a massive thing. If everybody could do one little thing, that would still make such a huge difference. You know, a single person can't stop how much industry there is in the world and how much pollution we're creating. But if we think about the individual items maybe that we buy in our shopping, so buying carrots loosely instead of buying them in a plastic bag, those tiny little things will all make a difference if everybody got on board and did one of those little things. You know, and then maybe we can stop this sort of thing happening. But I'm sure we've all got lots of time in the next few weeks to think about it.
We will have, yes.
Interestingly, myself and lots of other witches and pagans all got together, not together realistically, but got together and did what we call a cone of power last week. So it was about lighting a candle and then all of us trying to manifest the same thing that we wanted, which was basically just for health for everybody in the world. And literally hundreds of thousands of people all over the world got together and did that at the same time, which was fabulous. And then there are loads and loads of other things going on. So people are going to have rituals on the full moon. The next festival isn't until the 1st of May, but I'm sure if we're still in this situation then, there will be lots of individual rituals going on the 1st of May, just trying to ask for help and healing for people.
I'm seeing a lot of that as well in the spiritual realm. Is a lot of people coming together to meditate and to send out love and send out light to those who are maybe feeling sort of anxious or fearful around the situation and what's going on at the minute. Well, thank you very much, Louise, for coming on and telling us about your journey and explaining witchcraft and Wiccan and Hedgewitch, because I didn't know that. So I'm going to go and I've seen on your website a little cauldron that I'm like, oh my days, I need to buy that for the kids. It's so cute. So I'm going to go and have a look at the herbs as well. But I'll put all of the links as well for your website and your social media in the description below. So if anyone does want to get in touch with you, then they can do so through your website. Okay? Thank you very much, Louise.
No problem. I'll talk to you soon, Lindsay. Bye-bye.
Bye.